Welcome to Tactically Sound, an RPG-focused podcast. I'm your host, Spencer, joined by my co-host, JumbyJumbwa, otherwise known as Matt. And this current series that we're doing is serving as a Fallout deep dive on all things related to the TV show. So we're breaking down season 1 episode by episode, and we highly encourage that you only watch this podcast if you're prepped for spoilers regarding the show. So we'll try and keep it we'll try to keep any other spoilers that aren't related to the TV show out, but we're going to talk about Fallout lore at least as much as Matt and I know. So this is meant for those of you guys who have watched the show and just wanted to break down an analysis, some conversation, and hearing Matt and I's thoughts on the episode. So this episode is episode 7, the radio. We only have one more episode left. Matt, what did you think of the episode?
I think it was pretty good, like some of the others we've reviewed. I think this one, just like the last episode, is really building up for this final epic ending. A quick preview for the final episode. I feel like some of that stuff, some of that payoff could have been in this episode. I think this episode kind of fits the pacing of the whole show, but I would be lying if I didn't say that I felt like I was dumped on with a bunch of payoff in the final episode, which makes a very jam-packed finale, but as well as I just felt like I got a full course meal for dessert kind of thing. And so, this episode I feel like does a lot of good things for setting up the finale, but as we will learn with the final episode next week, I have some thoughts on it.
Right. Let me do a quick summary, not a full summary, but just letting you guys know what's in the episode, so that way we could kind of take this one a little bit more freeform, because this one has a lot of themes, a lot of buildup from all the other episodes. So it opens with the NCR Ranger farmers, so they're wearing NCR Ranger uniforms, and the way that I think this episode connects to the theme is generations, but also introducing again the conflict between Molidaver and the ghoul. And then we go to Hollywood Forever, where we see Molidaver as, I believe her name is Miss Williams, and she is a scientist, and she has a verbal confrontation with Cooper Howard. And then we're in Vault 4, where we learn about the Hawthorns, which if you watched, I believe it was last episode or the episode before that, where I asked Matt, I was like, are the Hawthorns really actors, or are they really scientists? Are they actually going to be in Vault 4? And it turns out, yes. After this rewatch, I connected the dots. I was like, oh my God, that's the Hawthorns. So yes, the Hawthorns are very relevant. And then we're at the Red Rocket, where this is where Thaddeus, to me, is the true villain of the series. Like, if there is one person who basically never does anything morally, it's gotta be Thaddeus. He is the worst because he puts the dog in the like Nuka-Cola bin, the storage bin, and that to me is like the unforgivable sin. He'd already, like, I want to say in this episode, the guy is gonna help him like fix his foot, and he pulls a gun on him and is like, why do I have to? Why can't I just kill you and take it all? It's like Thaddeus pisses me off the most. And then we get the cameo where, last episode, Matt and I were talking about how we really enjoy comedians in Fallout, especially when they're casted right. So we have the comedic moment with Fred Armistan as the DJ. And then we have, before the Great War. Cooper remembers his conversation at the Hollywood Forever, and he wants to bug Barb's her thingy, and then Thaddeus, and the KPSS radio station. So he interacts with Maximus, and Maximus makes the observation that Thaddeus is a ghoul, but he also makes a sacrifice for Lucy to continue. And then it ends with the going away ceremony, which is like you think that they're gonna kill Lucy, but all they do is banish her to the wasteland.
Spencer, it's Goosey. Get it right.
Wait, who's Goosey?
Lucy, but they call her Goosey, the overseer with the one eye. It's always
Goosey.
Calls
her Goosey?
Yeah.
That did not make
you're
that
gonna
connection.
have to go back and notice every scene with him. It's Goosey.
He always calls her Goosey. Oh wow, that is I totally missed that. Okay, so Goosey. All right, so the themes. Here's what I wanted to talk about. So generations. So the like main quote for this episode is that every generation has their own dumbass ideas. And so I was thinking about that as I was watching this episode again. I was like, okay, what generations are they showing us? So obviously there's Maximus and Lucy, right? So Maximus is the generation which we know suffered from the Shady Sands bombing by Lucy's father. Mm-hmm. And then we have Chip and Norm, who are like the cowards, right? Who are like staying in the vault. And like, what is this next generation post the raid? How are they going to live when they all get dispersed among the vaults, right? And then even then there's the baby, which is like the next generation. And what will that look like? And then we have the leadership in the vault contending, and then you have the generations of the ghoul as Cooper Howard, and the generation of Miss Williams or Molidaver, right? So that's just like some of the opening generations. But what are your thoughts on that overarching theme? Every generation has their own dumbass ideas, which is like the official tagline of the episode. What was your interpretation of that?
Well, I also like the little bit of ending of that tagline, to save the world, right? Like they all have their own ideas about how to save the world. And I think that's so true for our world. Every youth has their own idea of like how we're going to save the world because it's not already been saved yet, So I think that this show is trying to piggyback on that and explain that, like kind of commenting on our reality in a way. And like you said, through each generation, every single person has their own idea of how they're going to save the world. And I thought the whole this whole idea was set up really well in the beginning with the ghoul getting the information of where Molidaver is at, actually the location at the observatory. We have the death of not only the first son in the previous episode, but now the younger son. And he had his own ideas about saving his world, right? Getting out of being a lead farmer. So yeah, I totally agree. And this is why I love these podcasts, because I don't always notice what you notice. And so I'm happy to keep exploring that this episode.
Yeah, we totally notice different things. So let's do this. Let's try to figure out whose ideas are what, right? So Maximus, to me, the illustration, I don't know about below the surface level explanation, but he didn't want to give up his power armor towards the end of the episode. And he was like, but I could use it to save people. And she's like, but you would be like dooming the entire vault by taking their power cell or whatever. And then also that plays out when he makes a sacrifice for her by taking the different head and like making that sacrifice. So he's showing the chance to evolve. And then Lucy, she goes like, if my dad found out that I had to hurt a bunch of people in order to save him, like that would not go over well. The irony is
a little
foreshadowing that her dad is absolutely the type of person who would do a really dumb thing to save, quote unquote, his family. And then Chip and Norm, like Chip is wanting to embrace his new life in the vault in a way. And also I think he's fearful. What do you think Chip's like thought process is in kind of embracing?
I feel like for him, like he represents those people who have like their ultimate goal in life is just comfort and just getting through it without getting hurt, right? As much as possible. And so his idea of saving the world is saving the fantasy of the vault in a way for himself. It's not even for others. It's just like for himself at least. And it's very personal. Well, I guess most of these characters, they have personal ones. I think that's what they have all in common. But that's what I think is very interesting about Chip. Norm, on the other hand, it seems like his measurement is with truth of what is going to ultimately save the world. It's truth. It's uncovering that, giving people the truth, and that's going to save the day versus this fantasy, in contrast, this fantasy that Chip has about just having this nuclear family in the vault. Right.
And then the overseer, let me make sure I get her name right. I want to say, is it Betty? Is she the overseer? Mm-hmm. Okay, because there's Betty and Barbara. So I think her goal is to preserve the status quo established by Vault-tec, right? Like her vision is still the vision. Now, one thing that caught me off guard is, I want to say, Steph, she's excited to go to Vault 32. Why do you think? I think
because she has a management position, dude. She has to have some sort of management idea if she's from Vault 31.
Yeah, so why is she excited? Like, wouldn't she be not wanting to be in Vault 32? Like, because that's the experiment. Isn't that the one that they experiment with famine? Or am I tripping?
Well, I think, yes, there was an experiment, but I think just like in Vault 4, experiments can end. And so I'm wondering if the experiment is ending over there and is acting as a safeguard for the experiment still happening in 33.
Very insightful. I like that. Okay, so then my other theme is, actually, real quick, let's go over because there is a great discussion in the scene of Hollywood Forever between Molidaver and Cooper. And, Cooper is this veteran and he's fought in the Great War. And Miss Williams is just dropping all these truth bombs on him. Like Vault-tec, they could have, used technology to stop the war, but they didn't, and we have more in common with the civilians of our enemies than we do, with Vault-tec or whatever. And so Cooper is really resistant to that, but then she leans into the fact that, like, you don't really know your wife, right? So I think Cooper's desire is probably to find out the truth, right? Like, he wants to know the truth about his family and what's going to happen to them. And I think Molidaver also wants the truth, but she wants the truth almost at any cost, and for the greater good. Whereas I think Cooper really only cares about his nuclear family and preserving that and making sure that they don't get caught up in something that they're going to regret. And so there is a moment in time where their interests kind of align because his wife is entangled in the company that Molidaver wanted to take down. But then we have Holly. Let's see, what was my other theme? After that, she mentions California as the promise of the American dream. And I think that is a theme that we've seen play out through the whole season, right? So what are your thoughts on California representing the promise of the American dream via this episode and even connecting the dots between the other episodes?
I think that's all super interesting. I've never really thought of that, but that kind of makes sense. It's super American manifest destiny, the idea. I think Fallout just kind of screams kind of American manifest destiny, capitalism. kind of reminds me a lot of the Mormon religion, in a way, just like very America-centric, right? Glorifying what it means to be an American. So I think in that sense, like, yeah, maybe they are capturing it pretty well of this kind of idea of manifest destiny, that the West has the future. The West holds the future. The West holds opportunity. The West holds promise, and the West has more freedom. The idea that we had coming from England, in the East, all the way, just keep going west, 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 from sea to shining sea, like the song. So I think we're probably will see some more exploration of those ideas, especially going into season 2.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you've played Fallout 3, you see what life is like on the East Coast, and that has a little bit more of a colonial feel, right? Like a little bit more of this establishment. You see all these large kind of monuments and these traditional like American iconography, whereas in this season, you see it's not so much like, there are elements of it that give off the Mad Max vision of the future, desert, raiders. But I think what's interesting is, seeing this, and then also seeing the new Planet of the Apes film. It's really cool to see what like the beauty of, California would look like in a post-apocalypse, and how, California, especially LA, doesn't have as many central locations as the East Coast does. California is very spread apart. It's like whenever people come out to California, I always tell them, like, just so you know, you're navigating a huge region. Yeah. Like it's so much. Like, you could totally picture that in a post-apocalypse, this would all be a jungle. Like, this would be jungle and desert and mountains, trees everywhere. Everything's just spread apart. So I think it's interesting that the landmarks that they show off are Griffith Observatory. Because, yeah, that's kind of one of the iconic locations we have. Hollywood's Forever, I know it as Hollywood Cemetery Forever, but like that's another interesting location. It's very church-like. It's kind of like the Church of LA in a way, and she's kind of the prophet, like the prophet of the West Coast, waking up the people who want to revolt against Vault-tec. And she says something, again, kind of tying back to the McCarthyism theme of communists are just the dirty word they use to call, like, something like those of us who don't believe in whatever they say or whatever. Oh, I have it here. That's just a dirty word they use to describe people who aren't insane. So this like level of, last episode was kind of focused on the cults, right? Like, are you in a cult? Am I in a cult? And she's basically saying, we're getting to the bottom of this. Like, here's what actually went down. Like, I actually have information. I was a part of this. Your wife is a part of this. We can get the details. This doesn't have to all be conspiracy. We can actually like figure it out.
It's lifting up the veil in a way of what's really happening, because Cooper is us. We don't know what's really happening, what's really being fought, right? It kind of reminds me, even from a Christian perspective, like spiritual warfare kind of thing. Like, there's something deeper happening behind the scenes you're not realizing.
Yeah, Cooper's going through this, like, he has this sense of dread, I think, and he's looking for someone to explain. And I think by the time we meet the ghoul, Cooper is very hell-bent on the tangible goal of finding his family, right? Whereas I think when he's Cooper in the past, he's willing to entertain a little bit more of like the details. Whereas when we meet him later, he's not interested in details. He just wants the solution at any cost, right? Kind of like Molidaver. Like, he becomes more and more like Molidaver as time goes on. And then she tells him that there's a lot of money in selling the end of the world. And that's another interesting lens. Like, I really think that if someone was to want to play Fallout for the first time, I would kind of tell them to watch the show first, because I think it gives you a clue into the like philosophical ideas of what you should be thinking about as you're discovering the vaults. Like, okay, they're running experiments, right? Vault-tec represents making money off of the end of the world, right? Like, that's a really interesting concept to watch play out, and I think it could enrich your gameplay experience as you're going through it, right? Like, having that background knowledge, I think, makes it interesting, because it's just like they label things, and Molidaver is such a cool character because she has the answers. And I think at one point they have this interaction where Cooper is like, the villain doesn't ever think they're the villain. Like, she kind of embraces that she has to do a little bit of like treachery to get to the truth and to fight the enemy that she's up against. And then I have let's talk about Thaddeus, because he has some interesting plot points, right? His foot gets repaired by the snake oilsman. He finds out he's a ghoul. He abandons Dogmeat. What are your thoughts on the character of? I've labeled him as the ultimate villain of the show, and maybe in season 2 he will become even more. Oh yeah,
he's definitely coming back around, right?
He's on a villain arc, right? Like, this is the beginning of his
he's gonna have
ultimate villain arc.
A great villain comedy arc, I think, eventually, because I think the actor is a comedian. Caitlin keeps saying that she sees him on YMH, Your Mom's House, so he must be a comedian. But I can see like him ending up being kind of funny with some ghoul stuff in season 2. I thought it was really interesting though to see how villainous he started in the show, and then when he thought Maximus was actually Knight Titus, there was that redeeming quality of Thaddeus, I thought, where we were talking how he started talking about how he treated Maximus, and he has his regrets with that, and he wishes, hope Maximus the best. But then he also, on top of that, saves Maximus during the Abomination fight. So there's a couple things that are like building your like for this guy, but then, as we've seen in the last couple episodes, that flip, that turnaround, right? And now he is back to his like kind of old dirty self. But I think it's going to leave some room for comedy, especially with the ghoul stuff and that interaction they ultimately ended up having, where he's like, I'm in the same position as you now, Maximus. Sorry, I hope there's no hard feelings. Let's get out of, see if we can get out of here and survive, the wasteland. So I'm excited to see how his story's gonna turn out, if he's gonna lose his nose right away, like all this stuff. And then his story also made me start questioning, how did the ghoul become the ghoul? How did Cooper Hauer become a ghoul? Was he injured pretty bad as well? Was he in a fight and then had this life and death moment where he had to choose to become a ghoul? Was that with his daughter? Was that with someone we are curious to see? I don't know. I'm wondering if it was just from the nuclear fallout, because I believe that's how ghouls came to be. It was just from the nuclear fallout. It wasn't just a potion, So I'm curious to now learn about that after seeing that. Were you always aware that there was like a potion? Was that in the game? I can't remember.
Well, I know that Tim Kaine, the original creator of Fallout, says that even the developers didn't know how ghouls became ghouls. Like, they intentionally wanted that to remain a mystery as long as possible. But across all of the games, I really don't know. I'm sure there's different explanations. I think it's meant to be a mystery. And I have a feeling that this snake oilsman and his potion is just one way that has created this ghoul effect. But yeah, I don't think there is an official, like, this is how a ghoul becomes a ghoul. But yeah, then let's move on. So what do we think is the experiment in Vault 33? Because he said there, or is it Lucy talking to Birdie? Who is it? There's a conversation where Lucy basically implies that there's no experiment in Vault 33. And then someone looks at her like, oh, you don't realize there is something. Like, what do you think that experiment is?
I think it might not be this, but it just came to mind as we were talking. And I've been thinking about it a little bit. I think building off what you said, Vault 32 looks like they suffered from a famine, right? And then they were fighting over resources, discovered that maybe they weren't being given enough resources for whatever reason. Maybe the experiment was limited resources, and they eventually found out they were being controlled by management. If this is the case, it doesn't look like this is happening in 33. In fact, it looks like the opposite is happening in 33. It's like paradise in a way, in its own culty way. And especially in comparison, they seem to have everything they need. They can even make cake, right? So I think the experiment was an experiment conjoining all three together of experimenting how kind of with kind of a caste system in a way, like social caste system of like, we're gonna have these poor people kind of enslaved, do all this labor, and maybe even their resources are being allocated for Vault 33, right? And the people who are gonna manage all this experiment are from 31, right? And so that's how they all tie together. 33 is going to be getting fed by 32. And how long can we keep this up? Because maybe we want to see if the current caste system we have in our world of, poor people on the bottom, rich people on top, right? How is this going to play out in the vaults? So I don't know. That's my guess with the experiment in these three vaults. It's some sort of caste system, resource base, reflection of capitalism society. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, something that connects the three of them together, something to do with management, and then how it relates. Yeah, kind of like how long can you keep the vault an oasis, and what kind of could you manufacture happiness over centuries or something,
right? With the cost of suffering in some sort of way, right? Like, what is the cost for our happiness?
Right. And then what do you think about the idea that, is Chip and all of these people living in the vault, are they cowards? Or, do you think there's a, is Chip's view of the vault post Raider launch true, that if you're a citizen of the vault, you're inherently a coward? Because, I kind of disagree. I think some of these people are just, this is all they've known. Yes, maybe because Lucy wasn't a coward. So I think maybe the vault produces mostly cowards, but why would you go out there, right? If you know that or believe that it is irradiated, I don't really blame them for staying in the vault. I don't think that is the definition of a coward. It's well, I mean, yeah, we could go up there, but what do we gain by going up there? Is there anything better?
I agree with you. I think that it's hard to say that someone's a coward just based off of those reasons. There's a lot of people in our country that you would probably then just by that definition say are a coward because they've never traveled outside of their neighborhood or town. They have never traveled the world. They haven't seen anyone out of their social class, whatever that is. Rich or poor. So by that definition, they would be cowardice for never leaving their neighborhood, their town. You would say some people, and maybe you might have a better argument for some people who, in a way, we were all experienced vault dwelling a little bit with COVID, right? We're all vault dwellers, and we're all coming out to the surface now. And maybe there are some people who developed this cowardness for the outside world. So maybe it is some sort of commentary on that recent history. But I would agree with you, Spencer. I don't think that way.
I think though, but maybe what it is that Chip is the coward because Chip knows what's gonna befall his family, right?
Truth could change it, right? Truth and understanding,
the knowledge that you have, and it's cowardly for Chip because Chip has seen behind the veil and it has instilled a sense of fear in him. I
can get behind that. That is hands down. That is cowardice.
Right.
When you put it that way, I would be like, oh, okay, he's being a coward.
Yeah. So him wanting to. Now, I have a feeling in season 2 he'll grow, right? Like from a story perspective,
right.
Designing this, the architecture behind this character's motivations is that he needs to voice that he is a coward, so he has something to grow from, that they have somewhere to take his character, so he's not just the stupid, dumb guy for comic relief. He is now, it's a very Kurt Vonnegut inspired character, and Kurt Vonnegut, so he wrote Breakfast of Champions, he wrote Slaughterhouse-Five. If you like Fallout, I suggest reading Kurt Vonnegut's books because he has this kind of Fallout tone. They were inspired by him, and you meet a lot of cowards in his book, and a lot of it has to do with post-traumatic distress, where it's like, it's like he was a veteran himself. He would wrestle with the chaos of war, and often he would put characters who on the outside were trying to look tough, but deep down they were just driven by fear. And so he would constantly play with the inner turmoil of conflict, of the coward's way out, kind of like how Vault-tec can prey on people's insecurities, people's fears, giving them these chemicals, these products, all the ways that corporations can kind of get under your skin. And so I kind of see Chip as that classic character, although way less of a cynical take on it. I think Chip has a good heart and will ultimately do the right thing. At least that's how the actor gives me that vibe. Like the actor, you believe that
right.
This is him at rock bottom, just trying to make it through, just trying to survive. But I have a feeling as he grows attached to this child and as he realizes that Steph is a little Steph to me is super sketchy. I feel like Steph gives these looks where you're like, yo, Chip, you gotta find your way out. You gotta find your way out of this, man. It's not what you think it is, or it's not what you hope. It's almost like he hopes that this is his normalcy. This is the dude who fell in love with Lucy, and it's what a fall from grace in terms of character and integrity to go from Lucy to Steph. So I think he's coping right now. And I think in the next season, he's going to have to really figure out how to, and I can't remember what his arc is in the next episode. So that'll be interesting to watch. But I'm pulling for Chip that he will defy his own view of life as a vault dweller, right? So
right.
I think he's in the middle of his arc, or even at the just beginning of his arc. I don't think he wanted to be so exposed to the truth so quickly, and that was probably a lot for him to process, and he's probably still processing.
True, he's still processing.
What'd you think of Fred Armistan's cameo with the radio and the way that he has all these booby traps?
Dude,
he's this really
I like how you say it, Armistan. I swear, is it Armistan or Armistan?
Oh, I have no idea. Armistan or Armistan?
Armistan sounds strong. I'll call him Armistan. I've always said Armistan. I thought I think he's
Armistan.
speaking about us, not to pat ourselves on the back, but he's also a musician, very talented.
Yeah, he is.
And I love his musician jokes. So if you haven't checked him out, he goes on some of those late night special talk show hosts, and he does some music bits on there, and you guys should check him out if you haven't. But anyways, what's funny is he does a music bit actually in the show, right? Like he's talking about the mids and the lows. And not on the music, but in the music. I really loved his character. I think he is just so funny and dorky and cheesy, and that fits the kind of humor that we want in Fallout. So I didn't know I needed him, but that's always the case with Fred. I don't know I need him until I see him.
Yeah, he crushed it. It was a really welcome. Yeah, predictions for next season comedians. I'm gonna throw John Mulaney in there. I feel like John Mulaney is gonna appear because I don't want to spoil another show, but he was in another show that was dramatic, and I was joking. I was like, oh, because this show is now like award winning, we're going to see all these big name actors in the next season. Watch, John Mulaney's going to play a cousin. And then the next scene, John Mulaney shows up as a cousin, and he crushed it. So I think that I think he would fit this world perfectly. He's got to be in a vault.
Do you think, speaking of other actors or comedians joining, have we, I don't think so, seen anyone from Westworld appear in the show? And do you think anyone will appear in the next season? Because I think some of those actors could easily fit in this show.
Yes. What's the actor's name that's in Batman and Westworld? He's in the new Batman. He plays the detective. It's like at the tip of my tongue. Jeffrey Wright. I think Jeffrey Wright would fit perfectly. He plays Bernard.
Yes. Thank you for that.
I think I really like, is it Thandie Newton? I thought she was really good. Aaron Paul, I think, is the one that's rumored to be in the next season of Fallout from
Paul?
Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Trying to see if there's anyone else that.
Yeah, I know Aaron Paul. Of course, I know.
Yeah. That's who. Those are my picks. Is Jeffrey Wright. Ed Harris looks very Fallout, very New Vegas looking dude. So yeah, and Evan Rachel Wood was great too. So I think that would be sick.
That would be interesting too, especially because they have history with the team, the director, or is it the producer? I can't remember. Is it the producer or the director from Westworld? One of them.
I think it's both. Yeah.
Oh, they're both. Okay, they have history, right? So they've already worked together. They have that business professional relationship. It's a phone call away, right? Just making the deal. So that would be interesting to see them appear, especially with all the success and attention Fallout series is getting now.
I don't know why, but Jim Carrey, I would love to see Jim Carrey in Fallout because he has the darkness and the humor and he would be perfect for the Fallout universe.
I could see Jim Carrey being in it too, now that you say that. That would be funny. Especially because now he plays like those older kind of villainy kind of guys that are quirky and weird. I'm thinking about Sonic the Hedgehog right now. Like he could be something weird in this. He's so big though. Would he do this TV show? Yeah, he might be too
popular. Yeah, where it's like you can't disassociate the actor from the character.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the episode. I thought it was really insightful. It was one of those ones where you really had to pay attention because every line was like truth bombing the plot. Like, here's what's going on. Right. And so there wasn't a lot of action, but there was a lot of thematic kind of revelations. Right. So I enjoyed it. I think you're right, though. I think that if I barely remember, my short-term memory is terrible, but what happened in the next episode, I remember the ending, but I'm very curious to see the lead up of all the stuff that we're about to see, and see if there is any more payoffs between the little plot breadcrumbs that we've been getting from the themes and all that. So that'll be really interesting.
One thing that I'm still kind of confused on, and we were talking about in, I think, a couple episodes ago, is the formation of these three vaults, 33, 32, and 31. Because we did see Norm go to 31 this time. Is that connected to 33 then? Or did he have to walk through Vault 32 to get there? I thought he just walked straight there from 33 in this episode.
I'd have to watch it again. That would be interesting. Yeah, like, is it a circle kind of thing or a triangle we've been trying to figure out? Yeah, that'd be interesting. So. Sweet. Well, any other parting thoughts before we head out?
No, other than next week's going to be a big episode, loads to talk about and loads to predict.
Right.
So I'm excited for it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for checking out this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to both of our channels. You're already on the Yetti Den, so just hit subscribe, hit like, and then head over to JumbyJumbwa, JumbyJumbwa, to check out Matt's channel. Yeah, and
see you guys there.
Yeah, reach out in the comments. Let us know what you've been thinking of the show, and we will see you guys all next time. Later. Bye.
Later.